I'm supposed to be praying right now, but a word came up in me, and it was a tremendous word. It's really a word for the president, it's a word for me, it's a word for you. It's even a word for our presidents of the past, even though they're not here. There was a word that spoke in them. You know, God said in the Bible when Moses, I forget exactly how the dialogues went, but what I do remember is God said, I am what I am. And God's been showing me things for about 40 years because I had a very dominated mind, In the last 3 or 4 days, I'm starting to be free from the darkness to light. What's interesting, I'll tie this in with the message. I've listened to people that's gone to hell, and on earth, people have had fear, tremendous fear and worry at times, but then, there's seasons where they're not in that, but then it becomes a dominating force. And I've heard stories of many people that's just committed suicide when that black hole, that force of darkness just enters into them. When a man and a woman becomes one and they produce a baby, it's both physical, but it's also spiritual, right? Or it can just be conceived in lust, right? Because that's a spirit also, right? But I've seen when people go to hell, I've heard them say these things. They realize that in on earth, they were, at times fear would penetrate them and then they would become that. They would become that, And Jesus made a statement. He said, if the light that be in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? So these people would end up in hell, after they shot themselves. There's a story of this one woman that shot herself. She's in Great Depression and anguish, and she shot herself. She was young. She was probably at a very young age. She shot herself. She found herself in hell, and she found out that in hell, she wasn't just that fear and worry that entered into her at times that became her, where she almost say, I am what I am. That fear and that worry came into her. She realized in hell that she was that. That in hell that it was no more something that entered into her for a season or dominated her enough to make her commit suicide. It was something that she totally became, right? She became that thing, that worry, that fear. She could truly say, as God said, I am what I am. She could truly say that darkness was her in hell. It was her then. And that's what she was. She became. And that's why in John chapter 1, God said a great light came into the world. And that's why even Abraham Lincoln said, may our better angels rule. Abraham Lincoln said, may our better angels rule. I've heard stories, or not stories, I've heard testimonies of different people who can see in the spirit. This guy named Mel Bond, and people have like a headache, Like Mel's been at doctor's office one time, and he's sitting next to a woman, and he could see a demon on her head. He could see it right on her head. So he goes over. So Mel goes over. You can look him up on Sid Roth. Just go to Sid Roth, type on TV, click on TV, go down the search engine down below and type in Mel, M-E-L-B-O-N-D. He's got a couple shows he's done. But God reveals things through his prophets, through people that serve him, right? It's not complicated. Anyone can do anything that anyone else can do. So, God knowing that Mel is going to be the type of person that's going to serve him, right? Gives him some revelation and gives him a gift to be able to see in the spirit. So he can see this demon on this woman. And how do you think this demon got on there? Now, Mel might not know the things that I know, because that's how Christianity works. We all bring our gifts and our part, and we try to have the understanding of God who knows everything, right? Here's a person who knows everything, right? He knows everything. And the more you get to know him, the more you realize that. You realize that there's nothing he don't know. That's why he can prophesy in the future. You can have these things in Revelation that's never happened, that can be millennia. It can be a long time, because he knows everything. Do you understand that? He knows people. He knows what's going to happen. And as sons of God, he starts sharing that thing. It's called prophecy and revelation. He starts sharing that to people because that's a part of him. So anyway, going back to Mel's spiritual gift, Mel sees this demon on this woman's head, and I know how it got there. It got there by being one with dark thoughts. And I'm not talking about lust. I'm not talking about what Christians think of sin. I'm talking about worry. I'm talking about fear. I'm talking about I'm talking about stuff that whispers in your spirit and you're not really aware of, that makes you fearful and all these other things. There's a lot of different spirits, and Christians only seem to focus on these things that they seem can identify, and they totally ignore the other spirits. These are the powerful spirits. They're deceptive and hidden, like worry and fear. Those are all spirits. In the Bible, David all he did was start trusting in the fighting people of Israel, the soldiers. And God, as soon as he shifted spiritually and stopped trusting in God, because he had a different type of a trust than most people have. You're talking about a man who changed a nation, one person, that brought an atmosphere, and just like that person who shot themselves and ended up in hell in that atmosphere. Well, there was a man named David in the Bible, a king, and rightfully so, because he was a king of spirit, of belief, of faith, of trust. And all David did was shift his trust on the fighting men of Israel. And you see how it affected the whole nation. An angel came. Now, what kind of angel this was, I don't know. At first I thought it was one of God's angels, but now that I know a little bit more about angels, it was a big, mighty angel. And what I know about the Bible is Satan kills, steals, and destroys. So, I don't know. I could be wrong on this, but right to do things. Satan has legal right to do things, and that angel was powerful. So I don't know. I'm not for sure on what kind of angel that was, but I'm leaning toward believing it wasn't a good angel. It was more of a demonic angel, but I don't know. So I'm not going to say one way or another. But anyway, he could see this nasty little demon on this woman's head. And you know that stuff comes by your internal spirit. They can only attach to your internal spirit if your spirit walks in darkness. Remember Enoch in the Bible, he walked with God and he was taken, he was taken to the atmosphere or the place that he was walking toward. It's not rocket science. He walked with God and he walked so well, he walked himself right into heaven. Jesus walked with God, went to heaven. Elisha walked powerfully with God and he was taken to heaven. There was only 3 people that did that, and one of them was the Son of God. But what's amazing is 2 other men did the same thing. Walked themselves right out of this atmosphere into that place. That's an honor. Only 2 other people's ever done that. Enoch and Elijah. And even Stephen in the Bible, remember they looked on him like he was an angel. Because he was transforming. His spirit, the powerful spirit of wisdom and all that was just infiltrating in him, and he was radiating it out, and it brought out the demonic spirits that were in the scribes and Pharisee type people that manifested, and they acted just like demons. When that spirit manifested, they bit on him with their teeth. They just attacked him because he was a different creature. And these people walked into the light, you know. And anyone can do that. You just have to identify, you have to choose what spirit you want in you. So this woman, you know, at this doctor's office, and I know how these spirits work. They sneak in. And I'm not gonna tell the secret right now exactly how they work. I've kind of mentioned a few times here and there, but it all comes with some kind of, I gotta save some stuff for some books I'm working on. Because I'm gonna write some books. Hopefully. No, it's gonna happen. But I know how these spirits get attached to people. They have to have something to attach to. Do you understand? If you look at the revelation of a guy on Sid Roth called Steve Foss, Steve Foss, you'll see that he pursued in prayer and fast and prayed him, and he had a breakthrough. Right? He broke through, and God showed him these 2 roots that all demonic things attach to. One was called insecurity and inferiority. And see, Satan speaks these words. Remember the scriptures say, trust in the Lord with all your heart. And the Spirit just showed me another revelation just now as I said that, which something I already knew, but he just brought it to remembrance. And I don't know if I'm going to share that one. But I'll say, I need to write a book about the heart. But the heart is the place. You gotta learn to know your heart. Even people that weren't Christians knew. You ever hear the saying, "Know thine own self"? Know thine own self. And when God says, "I am what I am," He knows His own self. He sees His own self clearly, and no darkness can ever enter into Him. Now, we are totally a different creature. But some of our great... But going back to this woman with the demon, that comes from your thoughts. Do you understand that? Even Paul in the Bible, when demons were buffeting him, that's because of his spiritual DNA. He was a scribe and Pharisee for so long. He had both good DNA and bad DNA. The good DNA, he was willing to kill. He believed so much, he was willing to kill. And in the Bible, there was a man who stabbed someone in the Old Testament that was doing evil. And there was a man, which seems almost crazy. But I'm sure Paul was having that type of thinking. But the root of the type of thinking was for God, right? And I'm not saying anybody should go around stabbing anyone. Jesus pretty well clarified that one. When Peter was about ready to split somebody's head open with a sword. And there's even a revelation there. He cut the guy's ear off. That was the guy's problem. Do you understand that? He took a sword and he went to whack. See, everything in the Bible is for a reason. There's nothing there. There's nothing. Just like he went to split his head open. Jesus, knowing all things, and God who knows all things, knew that the problem wasn't. He wanted to destroy him, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was what the man was listening to. Remember, Jesus said, "Be careful of listening to the scribe and Pharisees, the leaven." Because they're that enticing, that word that came forth from them wasn't from God. And I don't want to get into all that because that gets into some deep stuff, and I don't have time for all that. But these demons, they attach. They attach. And then they have legal rights to do certain things. And that's what's interesting. Really, as I'm looking at this right now, physical sickness is a manifestation of some spiritual problem. And even Mel Bond says that. He says every demon has some sort of legal right or spiritual problem, spiritual reason to do what they do. They don't have any authority. You understand that God has the authority, and they have to have legal right to do things. Even with Job, a lot of people thought, oh, Job was the one righteous man. No, Jesus said there was none good. Now, Job holds Satan at bay for a long time, but finally, he said, the thing that I feared happened to me. Do you understand that faith is a substance? And that fear is too? Now, there's good fear, but fear can shift. Healthy fear of God can shift into fear of not trusting God and attributing evil toward God. There's a difference. One is light, one is darkness. Now, if people don't understand that, and I've seen hundreds of Christians that don't understand that kind of stuff. But who does? I mean, I have a special revelation of things. And I don't claim that I know everything, but because I tell you what, I just got I got some foundational things I know. But but there's so much more. I mean, there's so much more. And I know these things by understanding. Other people know them in another way. But I don't want to get I'm getting too deep on all this stuff. But sometimes I have to get deep too, because people don't believe. They think they understand things, but they don't. And that's the problem. But anyway, I'm getting too deep on all this. I'm getting off my message. But what I'm saying is if you could see this world in a spiritual place, you would see if you could see like God sees, you would see sickness on every person, right? In a sense, that's why Jesus said there's none good. Because everyone's sick, and that's including Christians, right? And I don't mean that Christians are born again, but that born again spirit is trying to grow just like it grew in Mary, right? And and all hell is trying to keep it from growing. You know, if you grow right, if you walk right, you become an Enoch, and boom, you're gone, or Elijah, or a Stephen. But not everybody is like that, and we're not like that because Satan rules this world, and he has infection everywhere. I mean, there's disease everywhere. It's everywhere in everything. It's permeated every fiber and fabric of everything, from business to everything. There's nothing that's good. Do you realize? I mean, just talking about just the medical field I used to work in. Do you realize there's 420,000 medical mistakes a year? And the news don't talk about that? 420,000 medical mistakes a year. And people have faith in the doctors, and faith in the nurses, and faith in what I was, respiratory therapists, and faith in all these people, but there's 420,000 medical mistakes a year. And you know why a lot of those mistakes happen? Greed. They're busy. Maybe a doctor wants to have more patients and make more money because the government's given less, because the government wants more money. And then the hospitals, the government puts restrictions on the hospitals and only pays them so much for your sickness. So they have to get you well and push you out. And then they hire less nurses, and less nurses have to try to do the job rushed, and they can't do it. And that's the cycle that we all live in, just in that dimensional realm of why those 420,000 mistakes happen. And then there's people have different limits of the ability to focus under pressure. Some people can focus under pressure, and that type of pressure, and then something does go wrong in the hospital. Someone does get sick. So when that person gets sick, and that nurse who has 5 or 6 patients has to focus on the one, then she has to rush for the others, then she makes a mistake over there. You see how it all works? And it's worked because that's the way money makes it work. It says love money is the root of all evil. And it creates a lot of evil. So that's just one small little fractional dimension of the world that we live in, and there's so many different multitudes of seeds of Satan, of different things that are just impenetrated from the thoughts that rule in you, where Paul said, I bring every thought into submission, because every thought is trying to rise up. It's that old nature that we have that Satan can speak into, and it can rise up at any moment. And then Jesus said, if the light be in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Now, when one of these things get a hold of your brain and it becomes a regular season in your mind, worry or fear, and it becomes a regular part of you, then this demon then can attach to you, right? And then he can not only attach to you, he can affect your mind on the way you think and the way you have relationships with others. So it's an interesting thing how it all works. So Mel saw this demon attached to this woman's head, and he could see it. It helps to be able to see it. It's harder to see the core reason that demon attached in the first place, because Mel can cast that sucker off, but that sucker can come back if she does the same thing she did before that brought it. Which is very interesting. But God said, I am what I am. There's no sickness in heaven. There's no disease. There's nothing. There's no fear. There's no worry. There's no hate. There's no... People have totally different spirit. Like people, when they go to heaven, people say, oh, people are glad to see people because they're no longer wrapped up in self. They're no longer wrapped up in this thing called self. And what is this thing called self? Remember, Jesus said you have to deny yourself. Of course you're wrapped up in self because Satan is afflicting you on every side. You're in a war. You're being attacked by this drama at work, this drama in your relationship, this drama here. You're surrounded by the enemy. Like David said, he's surrounded. You're surrounded by the enemy, so of course you're wrapped up in self, right? Self is constantly being attacked. And then when self gets attacked, whether it be a physical thing where the demon finally got a foothold and made you physically sick, or just he got you at a present moment where he did something, threw an arrow and shot you, and something that was so evil, like somebody cut you off on the highway, or somebody at work just nailed you with something, some unright thing, or there's always something happening, and then self gets injured. But Jesus died, laid down his self, and he even said that to Christians. He said, no greater love than you have that you lay down yourself for your brother. And you don't see that in the Christian world, You see ministers you see systems, Christian systems that just become like entities that just suck the money out to them because it's all about them, right? But then in a sense they are giving, they're giving something back, but then they start thinking of themselves as the God that gives back. And then but God doesn't need you to give to him per se. That's called an offering because God doesn't need that stuff. He already owns everything. So if a person's really a God, per se, as far as they already have everything they need. There was a guy named Peter Jennings that wrote this horrible, nasty, self-believed perspective about Jesus and said that he was just a poor pauper that took advantage of the belief systems of the people around him and just made him look despicable. But that was him seeing Jesus through his own eyes, through his own pride. But what he didn't realize, Jesus had everything he needed whenever he needed it, whether it be a grave or a donkey or gold to pay his taxes. Jesus didn't have to carry anything around with him because he had total perfect connection to God, and anytime he needed something, it was there, whether he needed to feed 5,000 people or whether he needed to raise somebody from the dead. He had everything with him and in him because he was who he was. But most of you probably don't remember Peter Jennings, but I would hate to have had a legacy where I made a video, but I've done evil in my life. Because why? Because I am what I am. And presidents have done some great things. Because in moments they tapped onto that godly prayers that people prayed for them, and they did these things. Like JFK did some great things and made some great statements. It's not what you can do for your country, it's what your country, or it's not what the country can do for you, it's what you can do for your country. You know, people have these moments of light and they say these things and then people worship them, and then we come to find out that these people, you know, were sleeping with Marilyn Monroe, or all these things we find out about them, that they weren't as good as we thought they were, because the media didn't trash people like they do today. The media is just has a witch hunt trying to tear down people. They used to leave these governmental people alone, and they did what they did, you know. But now they question every little thing that they decide. And why? They want to be the rulers. They want to be the president. You know, I like the guy, but he needs, I guess he couldn't, he needs to step up or shut up, really. And I can't even think of the guy's name. Maybe I shouldn't even say it. I used to follow him on Twitter. I can't remember his name. It's a news guy. Maybe it's better I don't mention his name. Maybe I'm not supposed to know his name. But he's just constantly telling Trump what to do. Constantly. But anybody can sit there and tell someone what to do, but not too many people can stand in that office and get all the total analyzation. The news have become like the newscasters that sit there. You've ever watched a football game and they sit there and they talk about all the football players and, and they take such pride in the fact that, he should have passed the ball, he should have done this. But they're not out there playing the game, right? They're not out there taking the hits. They're not out there. It's easy to sit back and watch and speculate and even be an expert speculator, but that's all they are. They don't have the ability to step up and actually be that person that they're actually worshiping, because they're actually worshiping that person in a sense. Anyway, I need to get off here. I don't even know if I'm going to release this video. Yeah, I got to get off here. Anyway. Well, I've already went this far. I might as well go 5 more minutes. But you know, we basically, that's what life is about. You know, when I woke up today, the first thought that appeared in my mind was to make this day good. You know, God spoke and He created. And He said that was good, right? So we have to make choices in a day where we got to question is this what I want to be? You know, when you take communion, you analyze yourself and you say, is there any flaw in me? Because you're putting I guess because I never even thought about it, but you're putting a holy thing in you. You're putting the holy word, which is the bread, and then the blood of Jesus, which is his spirit, which is a pure, holy thing, right? You're putting that in you, and why would you put that in you if what's already in you is defiled, right? So that you analyze yourself and you repent, and then you put the clean thing in you, right? And then you become that. You become a part of the great I am. That's what communion, I suppose, is. I never even deeply thought about, but that's what communion is. You're eating the word, and you're drinking his blood. Remember, Jesus said you can do nothing. You can't do nothing unless you're connected to me, right? And what disconnects us? Our sin, right? It's like a branch that just dies. If you kink a branch off, it just dies, right? You can't produce any fruit. The leaves get brown. Jesus did what he did by staying connected to the Father. And how did he do that? He stayed connected because he was in constant contact. All the evil things that they were doing to him, he didn't get infected with those things, you know? Even if it was Peter trying to keep him from going to the cross, he didn't listen to that. He identified the darkness, and he didn't become the darkness. And then he became our great Savior and light. Even when he went down to hell, the darkness of hell couldn't penetrate him down there. Now, I've heard stories from a guy named Kevin Zaddia that it wasn't easy in hell. But even in hell, he didn't have the Spirit down there, is what I heard, that bear witness with him. So all he had was his own witness and his own self. And we get, to be honest with you, we get that way here on earth. When the darkness does come, and it comes in every form at us, right? From worry and fear to unbelief to, a storm comes and we think, well, where's God at? And we have all these dark thoughts, and Jesus says, where's your faith? And we have all these things that are always happening to us, from your kid getting sick to all these dark things that are trying to penetrate you and block out the light of God. By the sun can't shine because the clouds have formed, and it's like it's not there no more, and the only thing that's there is darkness, and you can feel the cold and the rain and the wind, and where's God? And then the darkness enters into you and becomes you. And someone like Donald Trump, they've done nothing but throw darkness at him, trying to break him. All they've done is spoke darkness, just attacking and biting like demons. The news media has been like demons, just biting, trying to get in, like they're surrounding him, and they're biting and they're chewing and gnawing and gargling like a bunch of. Have you ever seen a person in a cage and all these dogs are on the outside and they're all hungry and thirsty for his blood? Every one of them, from Rosie O'Donnell to Jim Carrey to, they're just all thirsty for his blood. They want a piece of him. They want to destroy him. I wouldn't want that job. Unless I was really in a powerful place with God. And Donald seems to have too much, and what they don't like about Donald is he's always glorifying self, right? And that's one of the things that they come after him for, because he projects that thing that he's better than them. And that's not true. It's true that God did raise him up, because there's been prophecy and prophecy and prophecy about Donald Trump, right? And he's a man that does take stands on certain things, and that's what God needs. He needs stands. Someone to take a stand on certain issues and not bend. And they can't be bent, on certain things, from abortion. Because abortion is you're doing Satan's will, because first you're having premarital sex, and then you're destroying the fruit that you produced, and you're ripping it out, and you're offering that blood as it's a blood sacrifice to Satan, whether you realize it or not. And that's some deep stuff. But anyway, God said, "I am what I am," and we are what we are. When you make an alignment with Satan's word, the end result, you're gonna kill, steal, and destroy, even if it's your own baby. Anyway, I don't have any time for anymore. I had a much more greater message in mind, but anyway, I got to get going.